Hello, I'm Doug Benedict, and welcome to the Butler Esports interview series, where we're interviewing sports leaders, owners, and industry experts on the evolving world of esports. Today's interview is with Brandon Smith. Brandon is the esports director and enterprise project lead at The Ohio State University. He's also a two-time graduate at OSU, receiving his bachelor's and master's in technology education. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Of course. So, jumping right into it, how'd you get started professionally?
Professionally, which I've had a few careers already. I actually came right out of grad school at Ohio State and had a chance to be an entrepreneur. So started a small web development and design firm back when you had to spend a lot of time explaining to people what the heck the web was and why should I spend money on a web page when I could have a Yellow Pages ad. Like those were conversations we were having in the late 90s. So it was a great time to be out there and teaching people about network technologies and e-commerce and all in the early days. And it really just kind of spun into more things in business and technology consulting for a number of years. I worked at a pretty good sized bank for a while, starting some online products, and then ended up coming through the state of Ohio to working at Ohio State in technology project management and business transformation. It's been a number of years, so it's a really short way to condense a lot of work, but at least put me at Ohio State at the right time.
And so that's how you found your way into esports at Ohio State.
Yeah, I was right at the time that the university at large was figuring out how to get behind esports and game studies in general. I've been in a position in student life here at Ohio State with a major technology transformation project for the university. So my supervisor had the right questions at the right times, and I was fortunate enough to become part of the team here at Ohio State launching esports and game studies.
Absolutely. So the vision at OSU for esports, what does that look like?
Our vision it's what a vision should be. It's pretty big. We know it's something that's attainable, but we're going to be working at for a while. We really want esports to be broader than just competitive gaming. It's going to be the entire picture, right? Game studies is another major part of this. So we're looking at three primary areas. We have a great team of faculty members working on the academic programs, enhancing what's already an undergraduate minor and working toward a major and some other types of programs over the next couple of years. So the academic side of it for students attending Ohio State to be able to get experience in different areas of game studies and esports around management or development of those types of things, or games and different types of human performance and rehabilitation. We want to have the research side. We have a team of incredible researchers who are now working in human performance, but we have even more researchers at Ohio State that can add to the overall picture. And then the third major aspect of what we're doing around esports is what my team works on, which is around student engagement, working with helping getting students involved, finding outlets for their social interaction, as well as operating a facility that we have in the competitive team. So we see all three of them playing off each other extremely well. We're continuously in steering committee meetings and talking with each other, and I'm scheduling meetings even now with our research teams as we go into this fall semester about some fun things that we hope to do with our premier team. So the grand vision is one that we leverage at Ohio State, the research work that we can do. We leverage the resources that we have. We leverage the incredible faculty that we have in our student life department, and make something that's so much bigger than those three pillars are alone.
So with that interconnectivity, right, where does esports and you all lie, report structure wise, and then what do you do? I'm assuming you're not building the computers yourself.
My team won't let me touch the computers, actually. Our small team sits inside of the Office of Student Life. Some universities have student affairs. Our senior leader a few years ago certainly stepped up when we jumped in. And I can't imagine now, like looking back, how we could have started the student experience side of esports anywhere else, at least at our university. Student life was already very strong. We already have student activities, student organizations. The recreational sports team is within student life, housing, dining, all those other groups. So um, of those three pillars I mentioned earlier, uh, my team and I focus on the student experience. So we operate an esports facility that you see in the picture behind me that's open play for all students. We're coordinating community nights and intramurals in partnership with other groups on campus, and we're also overseeing the most visible part of collegiate esports, which is the intercollegiate teams. That's part of our group as well.
Absolutely, sounds like fun. So the $100 million question, right? What has COVID-19 done to your operations there? Has it stopped everything? Has it thrown you for a loop? I mean, it's thrown everybody for a loop, but
yeah. Yep, we're taking a loop. We're trying to leverage the ride through that loop, though. It's definitely changed our operations. Like in most universities, Ohio started making decisions in early March. Our students went away for spring break, and spring break got extended, and then they never came back except to get their stuff. Um, but education continued, and fortunately, after that 2 week spring break, so did the brand new esports teams continue. So we did lose access and lost. We lost our facility. That was really it's a jewel for what we wanted to do in making community and bringing students together. So that was definitely probably the biggest hit to our program, was not being able to have. We've had 2,000 unique students through that facility in just 5 months of opening our program. So we were really, unhappy about losing that, but certainly would prefer our students to be safe and healthy. But we had just formed our very first intercollegiate teams, our premier teams, in mid-February. So they were just practicing and starting their first competitions when COVID really had a major impact. And we knew that we could continue practice. We knew that we could continue scrims, and we knew that we could continue our inaugural season of competition against other universities. So we did that through a smaller group here, NCE, so mostly Ohio schools. But our first premier teams continued competition and did pretty well for their first time out. So we're trying to take everything that happened from that inaugural season and what we were able to do with COVID in the spring and leverage that as we move here into the fall, because we expect more of the same. We've had more time to plan for it, and we're looking for more ways to engage students that's more than just a Zoom meeting as we move forward on the competitive side. We will also really expand our offerings to the larger base of Ohio State students. We didn't get a chance to do intramurals or a lot of community nights last year as we were just getting our program off the ground. So that's a really big focus coming into this year. It would have been anyway, but especially in light of COVID and physical distancing, we will be doing a lot more work with our student organizations and a lot more work around virtual competitions and leagues, so that even the less competitive students can still have some fun.
Throughout this whole interview series, I continually find that everyone's like, well, esports wasn't the goal, but here I am. So that's why we asked the question, like, you jumping from other sectors into esports, were you given like any advice specifically about the realm of esports?
I sought a lot of advice. I will say there are a lot of people willing to offer you advice. And just like the early days of the web that I mentioned, right, there's no credential that says I'm a guaranteed expert. So that leaves room for people who are pretty good at what they do and can provide you great advice. It also leaves room for people who are just changing their title and coming at you. So we came in very humbly, knowing that we haven't done this before, and not trying to lean on the Block O and Ohio State to say that we're going to do this thing right the first time. We asked a lot of questions, like a lot of people out there, between Mark Deppie at UC Irvine and AJ at University of Utah and Kurt Melcher, had early conversations with them as they've had more mature programs by far. And then we looked outside of the collegiate space to talk with some pro teams. So we were able to get the ear of a few pro teams that were operating in 2018 and 2019. We've got a great group of people here based in Columbus, Ohio. Esports Engine used to be MLG. they're a phenomenal team of people who really do a lot of the behind the scenes work that makes esports polished and run really, really well. And they've offered their advice to us. So we had to go out and seek it. No one certainly came and knocked on our door and said, we can give you a turnkey program, which is great, because we would have said, we don't think anybody can do that. Every university has to look at their university, what they're strong at, where they have opportunities for development, where there are initiatives already going on. I think every college will have to choose for themselves, where do you house an esports program? How broad is it? What's our development plan? And fortunately, I think my previous experiences before coming to esports formally really helped us kind of navigate that and look at how do we get this started. And with every university, as they are all doing now that have esports, how do we continue it through these weird times in the nation, in the country, in the world, but also at our universities, and make sure that we can. We're hoping to be able to lean into esports and virtual gaming while we know that we're not going to be able to be together like we used to be for a while.
Absolutely. So you mentioned it earlier, kind of. Esports and academics, like how do they come together, or how is the plan for them to come together at OSU, if you figured it out?
Yeah, and I'll restate, right? That's part of our vision. I think it's more than a vision. We actually have action plans within the team at Ohio State about what does the curriculum look like, what do the student field activities look like, what's the possibilities of extending into research. So we have those things laid out. It's a matter of wiring them all up and making them happen. That's the hard work right now. But in an ideal world, there may be students who choose to go down the track of developing games. And if they're doing that, then capstone projects have a chance to come back into the arena. Maybe they're field tested with our students. If they're looking at management of esports, then that's an opportunity for students to get field experience with our premier teams. On the research side, these are things that we'll probably be able to do even sooner, right? How do we measure and monitor our premier team, athletes, and what are their characteristics? And do we set a baseline, and how can we improve those things? Not only improving their overall health, but also improving their gaming prowess. So it's so much more exciting to look at all those things together than it is to just look at serving only a few dozen students who are the most competitive. What really excites us is the expansion beyond that, beyond just the competitive gaming against other universities.
Looking at all of this from like a student affairs side, what does student engagement look like for those people who aren't, on the competitive teams when they just like walk into the facility, I guess?
Right. So, I mean, we built, and again, this is pre-physical distancing, right? We built the majority of our assets in the esports space that we have for open play. If a student is enrolled at Ohio State, regardless of their credit hours, regardless of their regional campus, right there, they can come in, use their student ID, and access the facility at any open hour time. So, probably 60 to 70% of our facility is just for open play. During normal operations, we have 62 open play stations for PC gaming, which are pretty well equipped, as well as console gaming, which we want to continue to support because we know there are different audiences. Like my game may only be on console, my game may only be on PC. And even though there's a few titles that circulate in collegiate esports that are most popular and they're almost all PC based in competition, embracing that larger community means that we need to have FIFA and Madden and NBA 2K. It means that we need to have a VR space. So we have an HTC Vive Pro in the arena so that students can leverage something that A, they either don't have the money to afford to use and try out, or B, they don't have the space in their apartment or their residence hall room to actually lay out. They can't do a 10 by 10 square foot space for VR. So we really embrace open play for students, and we're really happy with just the first year numbers of, like I said earlier in this conversation, over 2,000 unique students have come through the space since we've opened. We have a high percentage of our international students, many from China and South Korea, who have found the space and made it a second home. Because they might not be able to bring over their gaming rig, or they might be used to cyber cafes and gaming cafes in their home nations. So it's a great thing to come in during this past spring and fall, and to see that space with all of our students, or a lot of students represented in different ways, and having a chance that if there wasn't a physical nexus, they might not have seen each other before without a lot of extra effort. So during COVID, it'll be different. We're trying to do more to engage different communities and groups while we're online. We certainly have challenges with that, but we can't wait till we can get back to a time when we can further leverage the physical presence as well.
Of course, of course. So, and take this question as it is, having your inaugural season, right? So what do you think you all have gotten right about the competition aspect of this?
It's hard to say. We don't have enough data to say what exactly we've gotten right. We started with a few anchors, and we're going to continue through with those. It would have been easy to just go to. We have some very organized student organizations on campus around gaming and esports. Like, it's an incredible student organization, the Buckeye Gaming Collective. That's how well organized and based around community they are. We've also had a number of students who have been competing on the collegiate scene for a while, even before we formalized things, and they continue to do that today. But we weren't going to just come in and take the top-ranked gamers in Overwatch or League of Legends or Rocket League, and they're all of a sudden the team. We pulled back out, and regardless of what first-year results would be or second-year results, we've done open tryouts. We finished applications just a few days ago. We'll do 2 rounds of open tryouts. Regardless of your rank, you get at least a chance to try out for the team. The student managers and analysts and our program coordinator are going to observe all the open play sessions. They're going to listen to audio. We'll go through a very open process to get to interviews and closed play tryouts, to try to give every student a chance on campus to make the premier team, and a little bit of art and a little bit of science to say what's the best team, not the top ranked players that we have on campus. And how do we work with our Department of Athletics? How do we work with other professionals in the industry to put together a training regimen that, above all of this, they're student athletes, they're student gamers, right? They are here first for school. They're here for gaming and esports second. So we want them to be well, physically well. We want them to be mentally well. And we also want them to compete at a really high level. So it's not something where we expect to see a championship come home as the proof that we've gotten it right in the first couple of years. It's something where we expect to see a baseline of how do our students feel, how do they perform, and that we're improving every single year on that, because we want this to be sustainable. It's not a one and done. I think advice I got early on from UC Irvine and Mark Deppy was like the success of your program is not based on championships, right? It's got to be based on other things. Otherwise, there's going to be years where you're extremely disappointed in what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think that perfectly leads into the next question of what does it look like to be on, the OSU competitive esports team? I just got accepted because I tried out and I did really well, right? So what does it look like for me to join?
We're evolving what we did in the first year of the premier teams, because we got started late in the year. So those students are going to spend about 10 to 15 hours a week around training and practice for the esports teams. And it's going to be a combination of things, right? We have a very robust recreational sports department at Ohio State. We have physical fitness trainers. We have a group fitness classes. So each student that's a member of the premier teams will have responsibilities to kind of work through a menu of things every week. How are you engaging in strength, in conditioning, and stretching? And since we're going to be much more virtual this year, again, we're thankful that we have such a strong rec sports team here on campus that's been doing that last spring and over the summer. So we've got a catalog of things that they can work through to get that done. We're working with our counseling and consultation services team to make sure that, these are the things outside of the practice and scrims and videos, but what are the educational sessions around resilience? How do you get yourself into the right mindset before a competition? How do you deal with a loss? We've been talking through a number of things to do in the normal cadence of practice and competition to we want our gamers to perform at a high level and feel good about it. This is not something that should add additional stress. Well, they already have a lot of stress on them. It should be something that helps them feel accomplished. Um, so we'll do the things that you might expect. There's video reviews, there's team practices, there's scrims, there's strategy with the team managers and analysts that are students as well, working with our full-time staff as a program coordinator. But those are parts of the program that are really on top of overall making sure our students are in a good place to compete.
Very holistic. So we've talked about student engagement, kind of. What about, I guess, the larger community? We've talked about the larger community and your plans for it. Do you have plans for that larger community engagement?
Yeah, we've really been tiering and stepping our program build out up because no one has enough resources to do it all from the start. And B, a lot of that public facing stuff that's outside the university with our fans and with the general populace, we just want to have some things to show before we go in that direction. So, like some other universities, right, we certainly want to highlight other competitions that our students are doing. We want them to be online streaming more. That's something we've slowly walked into, and we're looking at a few opportunities that we'll have to discuss once they're launched, about more intercollegiate play, and making sure that's a highlight of what we're doing. In the short of it, we are really we're still a relatively new university compared to some of the ones that have been out there already. And we have seen very quickly this past year, it's been much harder and taken a longer time for the large schools, Division I NCAA schools to get into esports and formally adopt it. We are really thankful for the hundreds of schools that have competitive esports programs that have launched years ago. What we hope to see are more schools that look not only like the smaller private universities or UC Irvine, University of Utah. We're hoping that we can help other Big Ten schools. If they need our help, we're willing to jump in and provide some guidance on what we've done that's worked. But as I said, everyone's program is going to look different. Some will be anchored in student life for what we're doing. Some will be anchored in their engineering colleges or in their honors colleges. So publicly facing, we'll be doing more this coming year around trying to promote our program to make sure people understand that Ohio State Esports is coming, and has arrived, and we're competing. But also, just like we've seen with the other universities that launched, we've got to pay it forward. We've got to do whatever we can to help other universities get their programs going, because it's not going to catch fire as well as we'd like until we get some bigger brand universities going in collegiate esports.
I agree. So how does OSU specifically grow in this area, right? How are you going to expand the program, if you can talk about it, if you've thought
Sure.
about it?
We can expand. I think our big expansion push right now is really about visibility. The sponsor dollars are not dripping into colleges like some might have projected, right? Esports in general is so much based on brands and sponsorships from a revenue perspective, and that's something where some universities can do things pretty well. It's a place where some universities it's a lot more challenging. So we are at Ohio State, this esports facility that's pictured behind me. We sit in the shadow of the Ohio State Stadium. So there's the big varsity athletics block O that we look at every day. But at the same time, our esports program only has a specific budget that kind of barely covers our operational costs. So as we try to expand profile and we try to expand our program offerings, we've got to continue, like every single university program, we've got to look at ways to fund it. There's not baked in funding to do this type of stuff. So, and it might make it a little bit more challenging for us because we want to make sure we offer this to all students and not just 36 or 48 of the best competitive students on campus. So we're moving slower than some of our students would like, but at the same time, we want to make sure it sticks.
Absolutely. Every student wants it to move right away, don't they?
Students
So,
hate to miss it, right? Like,
oh,
I'm going to be graduating in a year, and it happens with every project Ohio State does. A new major, a new housing. We did a whole new North District housing that some students were there for the construction of, and then they graduated before they could live there. So it's unfortunate in the small amount of time we have with our students, but um, hopefully they can feel good because we have a lot of them that are taking part in helping us continue to build this program. So we might not have gotten there last year. We might not get all the way there this year, but they can point back and say that they've been a part of it.
absolutely. And that's a great feeling. They just don't know it yet, I guess. So the second $100 million question I'll ask you, what do you think esports and the industry and collegiate esports is going to look like in 3 to 5 years? Where do you think we'll be?
It's well, that is the $100 million question, or I don't know what the millions of dollars are involved with it. So, um, my hope is that what it looks like is that larger schools find a way to make this their own, right? That in addition to the schools that have really leveraged it to help with their student engagement on their campuses or helped with their application numbers, um, I really hope there are more universities that look at this and see it as a way to engage students who may not already be participating in student organizations or may not be comfortable competing in athletics because of their physical presence, right? I hope that universities see more of this in the next 3 to 5 years. That this is an asset, especially as we head into these times when we're not sure when we're returning to normal from a physical distancing perspective. This is a great time to really jump into this. So, my hope is that in the next 3 to 5 years, from a collegiate perspective, we've got more universities willing to make the investment and get started and just get started, right? You don't have to go full tilt, but they at least have to get started with assigning people or identifying professionals within the university that are going to see this through. Um, from a professional perspective, what I really hope to see in the next 3 to 5 years is less of a reliance on venture capital funding and less of a reliance on direct sponsorships and more of a shift towards potential with media rights. Something that's going to make this more financially sustainable moving forward is what I hope to see, because I mean the eyeballs are there, right? There are people watching, where I'm watching my favorite streamer on Twitch or I'm watching competitions. There are people watching. And so how do you change that model in such a way that some of the revenue can go not just to the game publishers and not just to Amazon, but some of that revenue can come back to the teams in a way that they can support themselves into the future.
Absolutely. Great vision. So you shared some advice earlier, but specifically talking about people, students, anybody wanting to enter the field of whether it be collegiate esports or just esports in general. What would you say is your best piece of advice that you could give?
Um, I'm probably not speaking against anybody else that's given this advice. You may have a passion, and probably do, for gaming or for esports, and that is absolutely awesome. It is never going to be enough. Not you specifically, but as an individual who's interested in getting into gaming and esports, are going to need to bring other skills and experiences to the table to help, because pro esports operations are pros. They run like a business. They have financial needs. They have to manage a budget. They have to market themselves. They have to understand who their market is. They have to find new and creative ways to generate revenue. So that's a business. There's a business in it that's more like traditional athletics. There's coaching, there's team training and management. There's room for students who might be coming in medical sciences and coming out with degrees, or as physical trainers. There are going to be new opportunities for employment there. So I would say, as to anybody who's aspiring to work in esports and gaming because they love it, is to make sure that you are also leveraging what your passions are, what your intelligences are, and how does that fit into that gaming scene? What makes you unique, rather than just being an enthusiast, or being, again, just like professional sports, right? There's only so many positions for the greatest gamers. There's only so many positions for a point guard that you're going to be able to get at the professional level. But if you want to be around the environment and you want to work in it, bring something that's unique to it. And that's going to make it a lot easier for you to cross over. There's a couple of pros or heads of, chief operating officers of pro teams, right? There's so many of them that their backgrounds are in finance, or that they know how to manage money, they know how to raise money, they know how to spend money well. There's needs it's for social media marketing, for event management, all of that stuff, all those careers out of the industry. Look for the ones that line up for you. Where can you get that education? Where can you get that experience? Look less for internships that don't pay you, and look more for paid opportunities, where you can show that this is something that I've done and I can take that to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So last question that we ask everybody who comes on here, you gave amazing perspectives, and we want to continue to have people give amazing perspectives. So who do you think are two other people or two other organizations that we could reach out to, that would be able to give us a side of esports that maybe we haven't really seen yet?
Yeah. I'm not sure him. I think we might be one of the earlier universities you've spoken to, but the collegiate scene is definitely unique enough, and there are enough opinions out there that I think it would help. That so there are some established programs like University of Utah, UC, or Irvine that I might recommend having a conversation with. Um, I would also look for one of the large companies that often I mentioned earlier in this conversation, Esports Engine. Some people know MLG, some people don't. But when you look at some of the most highly polished competitions that happen out there, that takes a lot of work to put together. And Esports Engine is at the heart of a lot of those things, and has been expanding over the last couple of years. So there are a lot of different perspectives from within such an organization like that might help for your audience.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Well, that's it for this week. Brandon, we want to thank you. And we want to thank you for, everything you do for OSU and this whole gaming industry and all that. That's about it. That's all we got. So stay safe, stay well. Go Dogs.
Thanks a lot for having me.